It is 9 o'clock in the morning. It is the 14th day of April 2022. It's 54 degrees and sunny here at Site B. Baseball season has begun. Go Cubs. And it's Thursday here at Site B. And, you know, what is the number one thing we've been talking about a lot is that when people run out of ideas to actually say anything important about the hobby, they just bag on it. And it seems that once again, the number one target for the bagging is 4th edition D&D, and how anybody who plays 4th edition D&D needs to be burned at the stake like a witch. We also have a couple rounds of people already complaining about Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, and D&D Beyond merging. I don't know why. On both of those. I don't know why either of those are a thing. They are such a non-thing other than you can't find anything else to complain about. So you're just taking shots at just any topic. There's really more things to complain about D&D and Wizards of the Coast than these two things. So stop it. There is, on paper, and because as a stockholder, if you're a 5e fan who is playing in 2021, 2022, there is absolutely nothing bad about Hasbro and D&D Beyond merging. It's all good. Everything about it is good. So if you're a 5e player who's playing in 2022 and you're complaining about Wizards of the Coast and D&D Beyond merging, you probably actually don't play 5e and you're just looking for reasons to be angry because you don't actually play. Because there's nothing wrong with this. Is the quality of it going to go down? No. If anything, the quality of D&D Beyond will go up. Is it going to take away from the table? You know how my feeling is about cell phones and tablets at the table, but this is 2022, and pretty much everybody at the table now is got D&D Beyond or some type of thing on their phone to track their character. Very few, if anybody, who's a current 2022 5e player is still using paper and pencil. They might be using, both, like I do, or they might choose the digital over the tangible product. But if you're a 5e player and you're complaining about this, you're not a 5e player. Okay, so like I said, it's that time of year again, I guess, to bag on 4th edition and how much people still in 2022 hate 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I'm not going to get into the financial, political side of 4E. We can just, I think, all agree from day one, moment one, to the moment they gave up on it, every single solitary thing Wizards of the Coast did in regards to 4th edition was utterly stupid and self-destructive. If you can take personal opinions out of the function and just look at every step that happened, it's almost as if Wizards of the Coast wanted 4E to fail. The way they dealt with players, the way they dealt with game shops, the way they dealt with product, the way they handled Paizo, the way they handled the OGL, the way they sort of just gave up on 4E. From day one, it seems 4th edition was destined to fail and never actually got a chance to be the game it could have been. Also, I've got my 4th edition book here, and I'm looking through it again for the first time in years, and yeah, another problem is the layout is just awful. The ideas, great. The layout and implication of the ideas, awful. Everything about 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons pretty much is good. There are no really bad, awful ideas in 4th edition. It's just the way they were implemented. Now, I have said this time and time again, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to go to my grave believing this. And here's what I think Wizards of the Coast should have done if they really wanted to make a 4th edition. Did we need a 4th edition at that point in time? 3.5 had been around for a while. Most people were enjoying it. Did Pathfinder lead to 4th edition? Did 4th edition lead to Pathfinder? Did the OGL have anything to do with 4th edition? There's so many factors that I could go into or not go into. I mean, there's just so much negativity associated with that time period that you can't really discuss it without getting the emotional aspect into it. There are people who are still angry about 4E and people who still threaten 4E players for playing 4E. And it's stupid. Unless those players are hurting you, who the fuck cares if they're playing 4th edition? They're not hurting you. Let them play. Leave them alone. I don't care. Why do you? So, where did Wizards of the Coast get wrong, and why are people still angry at 4th edition? I don't know why people are still angry. It's been almost 20 years. Let it go. Get over it. But yeah, so this is about the time when the Eberron contest happened. And Eberron has just become a thing. In the late years of 3.5, we're introduced to the setting of Eberron, which is sort of gonzo, Shadowrun, sci-fi fantasy. It introduces a lot of concepts that aren't original, but a lot of concepts that were sort of part of the zeitgeist at that time. The whole steampunk aesthetic was really catching on about this time in the history of the world and pop culture here. And Eberron really caught that. That's why it won. I mean, a lot of people submitted ideas that were pretty similar to Eberron, but something about the way Mr. Baker and the others associated with Eberron submitted it for the contest, got it picked. It just hit on all the right cylinders. So Eberron was just catching on when the whole OGL Pathfinder 4th edition thing happened. Now, Wizards of the Coast should have taken the system that they had for 4th edition, because they were trying to milk the World of Warcraft, EverQuest, RuneQuest, MMO crowd. We all agree that that was sort of the target audience they were trying to get. Wizards of World of Warcraft was bringing people back to the table. MMOs were bringing people who normally didn't play back to the table, wanting to play a tabletop version of World of Warcraft, stuff like that. Eberron really sang to the zeitgeist of the time and what people were really interested, especially non-players who were coming to the table for the first time, really wanted to sort of more get into that steampunk style of play. So Wizards of the Coast had the ammunition to present 4th edition in the correct way. And what they should have done with all these new ideas, which, when you look at them now, really don't feel laid out well and kind of don't feel like they were even play tested. The ideas are great, but they're just a mishmash and they don't really present well, which is part of the problem. So it should have been released as Eberron, the role-playing game. It's not an original idea. They've done separate, unique universes in the D&D setting using the D20 mechanics. Dark Sun, Spelljammer, Planescape, Birthright, Ravenloft, the short-lived Diablo role-playing game that they did. Yes, they did a Diablo role-playing game. They had a lot of they had a lot of things that that had already shown that they did other settings using the core OGL D&D rules. So they could have said, this is the Eberron role-playing game. Here is the new Eberron system. Here is the new, the Eberron role-playing game player's handbook, the Eberron role-playing game monster manual, including every possible configuration of Warforged, all the new classes, all the new races, a complete, guide to adventuring in the world of Eberron. a year-long Eberron-themed adventure path type of thing. Really sort of taken the attention away from Dungeons & Dragons and really pushed Eberron for about a year. And really made the system cohesive with that World of Warcraft MMO idea and the feel of the Eberron steampunk, arcane punk, battle chaser style that was so prevalent around the time that they released the first 4th edition book. Because steampunk was really huge, and that whole arcane punk, battle chasers, magic tech idea of Thundar the Barbarian was really gotten popular around then. So for 1 year, it should have been Eberron the role-playing game. They should not have associated the system in any way, shape, or form with Dungeons & Dragons other than Wizards of the Coast presents Eberron the role-playing game. And the system was a system we already knew. Strength, Dex, Con, Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma, Armor Class, Hit Points, Saving Throws. Everything else they could have experimented with. They could have even used it as the playtest. And said, for a year, we're playtesting the Eberron role-playing game. At the end of the year, now again, this is assuming we're not including all the OGL Pathfinder stuff. We're just looking at Wizards of the Coast. So yes, there are other factors in our imaginary scenario, but we're going to ignore them. So at the end of this year, after basically being Eberron the role-playing game focused for 1 year, Wizards of the Coast puts out a survey. And the survey is, do you like what we've presented in the Eberron role-playing game over the past year? What do you think we need to fix? What do you think we need to get away with? Are you interested in using this system for Dungeons & Dragons? Should the Eberron the role-playing game system, with all the encounters, at-wills, and daily powers, and the all the other tactical mini World of Warcraft style stuff that they were trying to pull off in 4E, do these ideas work for you? Do you want to see them in Dungeons & Dragons? And if people had said yes at the end of this year, I really appreciate this Eberron system that you have made. I want to see it in the more classic D&D setting. Let's go back to the Forgotten Realms or Mystaka or Greyhawk or whatever and present the more standard fantasy that we're used to: elves, dwarves, wizards, humans, tieflings, druids, using this system, using the at-will encounter daily, shifting, more mechanically tabletop, skirmish-based with this sort of, MMO feel. Let's make this the next edition of D&D. Let's make this 4th edition. So we would have had 3.5. Then 3.5 would have petered off as the OGL is picking up steam. Wizards of the Coast would have given us Eberron the role-playing game for a year. They would have not have made anything for D&D other than maybe playtest stuff and Unearthed Arcana stuff for 1 year. The 4th edition system as we know it today would have been the Eberron role-playing game. At the end of that year, do you, world, want this system to be D&D 4th edition, or do you, world, absolutely hate this system? And if the world said, yes, this is the system we want for the next edition of Dungeons & Dragons, great. That's how they should have released it. Then the next year would have been pushing it as 4th edition D&D, advertising it 4th edition D&D, and then supporting it as 4th edition D&D. And plus you have the Eberron still out there. You could continue supporting it as a separate system, or you could slowly integrate it into 4th edition D&D. Either way, you now know that's what players want. And if players say, no, I absolutely hate this system, well, you've had about a year of the OGL puttering around. You've had about a year of Pathfinder and Pathfinder adjacent puttering around. You've had about a year to look at other ideas and maybe secretly be playtesting other ideas. So at the end of the year, if people say, no, I hate this system, I hate the encounter, daily, at-will, combat shifting, mechanical MMO feel of it, please go back to something more classic. It would have been easier for them to then, especially if they were working on it in secret, to then release a completely separate game. Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition could have been closer to, 3.5.1 / Pathfinder, or Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition could have been closer to what we know today as 5th edition. That's what should have happened. That's not what happened. We know that what happened was that any idea, and 4th edition has a lot of great ideas. The initiative system, the skill creep system, the at-will encounter daily system, the shifting, there's so many good ideas in 4th edition. It's just badly presented. And from day one to the very end, every choice Wizards of the Coast made regarding 4th edition was stupid and self-destructive, and almost to this day feels like they really wanted 4th edition to fail. So they put it out. There's all this bad press associated with it. People are getting violent, literally violent. I've told my story, my 4th edition story, over how, between 3.5 Pathfinder and 4th edition. Would that violence have happened anyways? Had it something different? I don't know. I don't really know why the 4th edition violence happened. Look, I understand everything that was involved and why people were angry at 4th edition. A lot of that anger seems to be pointless. I mean, there is absolutely no reason in hell that 15-year-old kid should have gotten kicked in the face by a 32-year-old man simply because one table was playing 4th edition and one table wasn't playing, well, pretty much anything. That's a separate story though. But yeah, just 4th edition and the violence associated with 4th edition and just the nonstop hate. And a lot of the nonstop hate is from people who never played 4th edition, who are just sort of wrapped up in all the politics. But if you ignore the politics and you ignore how badly it was presented, it's not that bad of a system. I actually like it. It's not Dungeons & Dragons. It's Eberron. Or it's something different. It's a superhero game. It's a MMO game. It could have been Diablo, the role-playing game, or something. And then, we have 4th edition sort of puttering around for 3, 4, 5 years, and then it just sort of vanished. I mean, Wizards of the Coast never even, to my knowledge, said we're giving up and we're going to start playtesting 5th. They just made board games for about a year, and you didn't see any 4E support from Wizards. There was some third-party 4E support, but, this was around the time of the OGL, so Wizards of the Coast was playing very close to the chest, and there were very few, if any, third-party 4E stuff. The only one I can think of is Wraith Recon, and I think there was one other one, but yeah, there was like nothing third-party for 4E because of the OGL and how Wizards of the Coast lost control of that so quickly. So they were like, nope! And then it just sort of gave up on it. And we saw board games for about a year. And then here's the playtest for 5th edition. So while they were making those board games, they were Unearthed Arcaning and writing what we would know as D&D Next, which would eventually become 5th edition. And then they released the playtests. And then they playtested it for a year or so. And then, bam, here's 5th. And people are like, fuck Pathfinder, I'm going to 5th edition. Or, fuck 4E, now here's 5th edition, or whatever. Stuff happened. Now, obviously, I'm breaking this down to the simplest building blocks possible. We know that there is a lot of other things that happened in association with the 4th edition disaster. Again, just from moment one to the moment they gave up on it, everything about 4th edition on paper makes sense. Every choice they made makes sense on paper, both with the system and with the way they handled the world and players and shops and just the whole Pazio thing. But if you just remove that and just look at, remove any personal attachment to it and just like think of backwards, backwards engineer. These ideas are good. It's just the way Wizards of the Coast implemented every single solitary aspect of 4th was just awful. Makes no sense. It was completely self-destructive. It just, you look at it in hindsight and you're like, did they not want 4th edition to succeed? It was just something where they had to make 4th edition and they just threw whatever idea they had out there. And then when they saw the wolves attacking it, they just sort of threw their hands up and hid in their bunker and started working on D&D next. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever know the truth of what happened, why Wizards of the Coast did what they did, other than money. It was a weird time in the gaming industry. There was a lot of weird stuff going on. There's a lot of politics going on, a lot of choices that were just horrible, self-destructive, and just dumb and backwards thinking financially and every other aspect. Player support, DM support, store support, product support. Then they're just like, let's make board games for a year. And okay, now here's D&D Next, which will eventually become 5th edition. And oh, God, what a tangled web of nonsense 5th edition became, huh, guys? So, yeah, here I am alone on my soapbox defending 4E. Stop being angry at 4E. 4th edition did not hurt you. There was no reason to be this angry at 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons in 2022. If you're not playing 4th edition, who cares? If you're playing 4th edition, great. Enjoy it. I want to join. Is 4th edition a good system? Yes. Is 4th edition presented well? No. God, no. I mean, if you look at the 4th edition book and the 4th edition monsters and the 4th edition player's handbook and even some of the 4th edition adventures, the layout is just awful. The system is just not presented well. It's just a fucking disaster when it shouldn't have been, because the ideas are sound. They're good ideas. They were just implemented horribly. Horribly. If you took 4E apart, put it back together to make sense, called it something else, it would probably do okay. Had they just called it the Eberron role-playing game and play-tested it like that, most of the anger would not happen. Now, of course, the outside stuff might still have happened because it seems like Wizards of the Coast was being run by, I don't know, hedgehogs at that point in time. Just nothing. Nothing they did during those years makes sense. Nothing. Probably made sense on paper, because if you take away the bullshit and actually just look at the idea and go, okay, yeah, I can see, yeah, all right, yeah, I guess this is a good idea. Yeah. But just everything they did, no. But there's just no reason to still be angry at 4th. Just let it go. It's been 15 years? Dear God, stop it. Let it go. If people are playing 4E and having fun, who the fuck cares? They're not hurting you. If you're playing 5th edition and having fun, great. If you're playing 3rd edition and having fun, great. If you're playing Pathfinder or Pathfinder 2E, great. If you're playing an OSR retro clone, great. If you're playing Call of Cthulhu, great. If you're playing Castles and Crusades, great. If you're playing Villains and Vigilantes, I want to join. I don't care what game you're playing, and you shouldn't care what other people are playing as long as they're not hurting you. If their table is having fun playing 4th, who cares? There are far more important things in the gaming industry right now to be angry about than that. So stop it. Why is this even a thing? And as for attacks against the D&D Beyond merger, if you actually play 5th edition, this is nothing but good news for you. So if you're attacking it and finding fault in it, then you probably don't really play 5th edition. You're just looking for reasons to be controversial, and that's just dumb. So, yeah, you probably don't actually play 5e. Anyways, that's 24 minutes of me talking about 4th edition, which way more than I had planned. Why am I so passionate about this? Now I feel like I need to take out my 4th edition book and read it again. Anyways, if you appreciate this content, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about 4th edition ever again, let me know. If you have any thoughts, agree, disagree, whatever, let me know. Till then, I have been the OGGM. I'm off to fly my flying boat through my steampunk world and figure out what's going on with my heater. So see ya.